Sports with Josh. Ladies, gentlemen, sports fans all around the world, Josh here with your latest edition of Sports with Josh. We're going to be talking about the AFC West today. Crazy week in football today. Week 16 in the NFL and a lot to talk about, but we're going to focus on the AFC West. First things first. Denver, Oakland, tied, both at 8-7. Both at 3-2 divisional. All tied up. Let's start with Denver. Denver went to Buffalo and played today. Tough loss, 14-40. Tim Tebow, 13 of 30, 185 yards, a touchdown, and 4 interceptions. 2 of them, which were returned for touchdowns. Tebow also had 10 rushes, 34 yards, with another touchdown on the ground. Willis McGahee had 64 yards rushing and broke 1,000 yards for the first time as a Bronco. Third time in his career with 3 different teams, once with the Bills, once with the Ravens, and now once with the Broncos. McGahee's still doing his thing. The story of this game was the Bills' defense. Intercepted Tebow 4 times, 2 of them for touchdowns. Same story as the Broncos had with the Patriots last week. Started off the first quarter playing great. Had an early lead. Second quarter, Tebow threw an interception. Bills scored 17 points in the second quarter. And in the fourth quarter, when it's usually Tebow time, it just fell apart. Tebow threw 2 pick sixes on consecutive drives. One of them, you can argue, wasn't his fault. Ball got hit out of his hands as he was throwing. Easy pick for Buffalo. But the other one, completely his fault. Bad ball. Shouldn't have thrown it. Horrible mistake. And he paid the price. Denver loses to Buffalo 14-40. Over to Oakland, who was in Kansas City today playing the Chiefs. Escaped with a 16-13 win. Carson Palmer, 237 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, 2 ugly interceptions. Carson Palmer looked horrible in that game. Better than Tebow, though. Kyle Orton from the Chiefs had 300 yards passing, another touchdown through the air, and 2 interceptions as well. This game was a very ugly game for both Kansas City and the Oakland Raiders. Oakland just happened to escape with the 16-13 win in overtime. Very ugly game between those two teams. San Diego played Detroit and fell early. 24-0 was the score at halftime in favor of Detroit, and the Chargers, who needed a win today to even remotely have a chance of still making playoffs, couldn't recover from the 24-0 halftime deficit and are now out of the playoff race, as well as the Chiefs, losing to Oakland. That sets up some pretty wild AFC West scenarios for who's going to win the crown. The Denver Broncos and the Oakland Raiders are both 8-7 going in to Week 17, the final week of the season. Denver plays Kansas City at Invesco Field in Denver. Oakland plays San Diego at the Oakland Coliseum in Oakland. Both teams need to win big time. Denver, if they win, they are in the playoffs, regardless of what happens with any other teams. Oakland needs a win and a Denver loss to be in. Because the Broncos and the Oakland Raiders are both at 8-7, if they both happen to win on Sunday, Broncos beating Kansas City and Oakland beating San Diego, they would both be 9-7. So we would look next at the divisional records, and if both teams win on Sunday, they will both be 4-2 in the division. When both the overall record and the division record is tied, they look at common games. So in other words, teams that they have both played this year. This year they've played 11 of the same teams. The Broncos are 6-5. Oakland only 5-6. So if they both win on Sunday, that'll be another game against common teams. So that would leave it at the Broncos at 7-5, the Raiders at 6-6. So the tiebreaker thus going to Denver. So in the event that both teams win on Sunday, Denver will go to the playoffs. In the event that only Denver wins, Denver will go to the playoffs. And in the event that Denver loses to the Chiefs and Oakland beats the San Diego Chargers, Oakland will be going to the playoffs out of the AFC West. Let's take a look at the playoff picture in the whole league. Today, New England clinched a first-round bye in the number 1 seed in the AFC, so they will be resting in 2 weekends when the playoffs start. They'll be at home watching the games. Right now, if the playoffs started right now, the season ended right now and playoffs started, Baltimore would be in that number 2 spot with the first round bye, but there's one more week to go. It doesn't end. Baltimore plays a Cincinnati team who, as well, if the season ended right now, Cincinnati would be in the playoffs, and Baltimore has that spot right now. Cincinnati needs to win, because if the Jets win next week and Cincinnati loses, Cincinnati isn't in the playoffs. So Cincinnati is going to go to Baltimore wanting to win the game. So look for a great game between the Bengals and the Ravens going into Week 17. The 5th seed right now is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They play Cleveland, so it should be an easy win next Sunday for Pittsburgh, and they already have a locked playoff spot anyway. Houston plays right now is the number 3 seed, but they also play on Sunday a Tennessee team who needs to win and needs some help to get in the playoffs. So Tennessee is going to be fighting for that playoff spot. Houston is in no matter what. The only not lock-in teams on the AFC side is Cincinnati and Denver. And that Cincinnati spot is a wild card. So the Raiders, the Bengals, the Broncos, the Titans, the Jets, all fighting for that spot. So Cincinnati needs to win to get in. Denver needs to win to get in. Should be interesting next Sunday in the AFC. Over on the NFC side of things, Green Bay, as we all know, has locked up the number 1 seed in the first round bye. They'll be sitting on their couches when the wild card weekend happens. Right now, if the season ended right now, like I was saying, San Francisco would have the number 2 spot in the first round bye. But tomorrow night, the New Orleans Saints play on Monday. And in my personal opinion, the Saints are going to beat out the Niners for the number 2 spot. So I see them being there. They play Carolina next week. Very high-powered Cam Newton offense, but I think Drew Brees will be able to outduel him in that game. San Francisco plays St. Louis. Both teams most likely are going to win out. New Orleans has a tough game against Atlanta tomorrow night. So right now, San Francisco has that number 2 spot. The number 6 seed right now is Detroit, and they would be playing at San Francisco or at New Orleans, depending on who wins the number 2 seed and who gets bumped down to number 3. The number 5 seed right now is Atlanta, and they're playing at Dallas. If the season ended right now, they'd be going to Dallas. Dallas losing right now actually to Philadelphia, so it's not looking good for them. So they'll have to beat New York. It's going to be between Dallas and New York the game next week. The winner of that will be in the playoffs, playing most likely Atlanta. So that's the playoff picture in the entire league, and a special emphasis on the AFC West. It's going to be a great Week 17 in the NFL. Can't wait to talk about it. Sports with Josh. See you guys next week. Sports with Josh.